After the success of X-Men, it didn't take long for 20th Century Fox to greenlight the sequel with a release only 3 years later. Luckily this time, they already had an established team of producers, writers, and actors, as well as keeping Bryan Singer as director. But can the sequel live up to the original, or potentially surpass it? With a release date of May 2nd, 2003, on a budget of $110 million, X-Men 2 X-Men United made a box office of $407.7 million. When X-Men released in July of 2000, surpassing expectations, it paved the way for the franchise to move forward and give us more of the mutant versus human war in development. 20th Century Fox was quick to capitalize on the success, and as soon as November of 2000, director Bryan Singer started to research different storylines that Marvel has done. He wanted to know more of the human perspective, the kind of blind rage that feeds into warmongering and terrorism, citing a need for a human villain. Singer, alongside producer Tom DeSanto, wanted a similar feel to the Empire Strikes Back's characters, quoting, "All split apart and then dissected, and revelations occur that are significant. The romance comes to fruition, and a lot of things happen." Another producer on this film, Avi Arad, announces a planned release date of November of 2002. At this time, Avi Arad was basically running everything related to Marvel other than the comics. This has obviously shifted now that Marvel is mostly owned by Disney, but even today, Avi Arad is still working alongside Marvel on such properties like Spider-Man. This meant they needed to work fast on getting everything moving forward. David Hayter and Zach Penn returned to write a new script for the sequel. They actually both wrote their own scripts, then came together and combined the best parts of both scripts. Another script was also made, this time with Singer and Hayter, which they finished in October of 2001. In some of the early scripts, we had characters like Beast, Angel, The Return of Sabretooth, and Annie Reynolds. They also included Sentinels in the Danger Room, as well as they had influences from Marvel Comics storylines Return of Weapon X, as well as God Loves, Man Kills. February of 2002, Michael Dougherty and Dan Harris were hired to rewrite Hayter and Penn's script. Due to the already having a large amount of characters being developed in this movie, Beast, Angel, and Sabretooth were removed, but Dougherty and Harris tried to keep some aspects of Dr. Hank McCoy on a TV being interviewed, and x-rays of Angel's wings are seen in Stryker's lab. In Hayter's original script, Annie Reynolds, who was in the comic run of God Love, Man Kills, was going to be Stryker's assistant, but Singer changed her to Lady Deathstrike, citing a need for another kick-ass mutant. We were to also have more development on Cyclops and Professor X being brainwashed by Stryker, but was cut by Fox due to time length and story complications. This made Hayter disappointed since he felt that James Marsden deserved more screen time, which honestly he did feel very cut out of this film. This wouldn't be the end of the rewrites. Another round of them were commissioned after Halle Berry earned an Academy Award for Best Actress in Monsters Ball, so they wanted to make sure that they had more of her screen time to capitalize on this success. Unfortunately, budget cuts came along as well, making it so that the movie needed to cut out all of the scenes with the Sentinels in the Danger Room. Don't worry, we do get them eventually in future movies, but what is upsetting though is Guy Hendrick Day and a production crew already constructed the Danger Room set. In the words of Deus, the control room was a large propeller that actually rotated around the room so that you can sit up and travel around the subject who is in the middle of the control room. The idea of the traveling is that if it's a mutant with some kind of mind control powers, they can't connect. Luckily for the team, most of the original actors came back to reprise their roles for the sequel, with the addition of a couple of new characters. One of our new cast members would be Brian Cox, who plays Colonel William Stryker. Singer opted to cast Cox in this role since he was a fan of his performance as Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter. We would also be gaining Alan Cumming as Kurt Wagner, or better known as Nightcrawler. Alan was always Singer's choice for this role, but Alan could not accept the role due to scheduling conflicts.
Ethan Embry had been reported to be in consideration for this role, but since the film's labor and development took so long, Alan was able to actually accept the part. Singer also felt very comfortable in casting Alan since he was very fluent in the German language. Some other actors we would have hired would be Kelly Hu, who portrayed Lady Deathstrike. Michael Reed McKay portrayed Jason Stryker, also known as Mutant 143. And we would also get a recasting. In the original film, we had Alex Burton portraying Pyro. It may have been a small scene, but he was credited. Now cast as Pyro would be Aaron Stafford. The filmmakers cast Stafford in this role after they were very impressed with his performance in Tadpole. We also had some cameo appearances. Some of the children were credited to being Kitty Pryde, Artie, Jubilee, as well as Siren. Also in the final scene with Xavier, a girl is seen dressed in a Native American style jacket, as well as a blonde boy who is dressed in blue. These were later confirmed to be Daniel Moonstar and Douglas Ramsey. Lastly, we would have Daniel Cudmore appear as Peter Rasputin, better known as Colossus. Cudmore was set to use a Russian accent, but Singer dropped the idea for an unknown reason, and on-site rewrites minimized the character's importance to a mere cameo. Since Avi Arad wanted the film to come out in November of 2002, producer Lauren Schuler Donner had hoped to start filming in March of that year. It seems some of the first X-Men film delay curse caught up to them since they didn't even start filming until June 17th of 2002 in Vancouver and finally ended by November. What's amazing is they had over 64 sets and filmed in 38 different locations. To me, this is really impressive for such a short shooting time of 6 months. On top of all the different locations, they did run into complications, such as insignificant amounts of snow in Alberta, so large amounts of fake snow had to be applied. Living in an area where we have a lot of skiing, producing fake snow is not that easy. They also had a close call when cinematographer Newton Thomas Siegel and 2 stunt drivers were nearly killed when filming this scene, which Pyro has a dispute with police officers. I personally feel that stuntmen and women do not get enough credit in the industry for what they do in films to make the scenes look more realistic. Continuing on the realism of how parts look more realistic in film, we had Rebecca Romaine Stamos return as Mystique, and luckily for her, her makeup, which previously took 9 hours to apply, was able to be brought down to only 6 hours for X2. Thank you, makeup department. They also had to work double time since Nightcrawler's makeup design took 4 hours to apply as well. For scenes where Nightcrawler had his shirt off, Alan went through 9 hours of makeup. Man, he is almost on par with how much Rebecca had to go through. For inspiration, they went with drawings that were done by Adam Kubert. And what really sold the character more was the fact that Alan studied comic books and illustrations of the character to best pose as Nightcrawler. I appreciate it when actors take the time to know some of the source material. I feel it shows in the way that he acts out as Nightcrawler. On top of his makeup and references to the source, the team also had to create hands like claws, a long pointed tail, pointed ears, and an intimidating ghoulish expressions on his face, as well as his markings. Alan would sometimes use a tail made out of rubber in some of his scenes, but primarily it was computer generated. In this film, they made modifications and redesigned the Blackbird's visual size from 60 to 85 feet. Makes sense since they did need more room since they added a lot more characters to this film. This wasn't the only thing they needed to be bigger. When shooting scenes involving Stryker's Alkali base, they used the largest sound studio in North America, the Vancouver Film Studios. They also built a miniature sizing 25 feet high and 28 feet wide to represent the Alkali Lake Dam. That's kind of a big miniature. An additional change was made when hiring Guy Hendrik Deus instead of rehiring John Meyer as the production designer. This was a good opportunity for Guy Hendrik Deus since it was his first film as a production designer, and it opened the door to other films such as Superman Returns and Indiana Jones: Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. When it came time to add the special effects, as I stated in my previous video, Mike Fink, the visual effects supervisor of X-Men 1, was not satisfied with his work, so this time he worked even harder. In X-Men, he had upwards to 520 shots created. But when it came to X2, he had nearly 800. We had some visual effects companies return back to work on X2, such as Cinesite, which they were in charge of all the scenes using Cerebro. They also created 300 visual effects shots focusing on character animation. Kleiser and Walsack Construction Company and Hammerhead Productions returned as well. They also hired a few additional companies, like Visual Concept Engineering and CIS Hollywood, which would both together work on a future film called Watchmen. Pacific Title, who worked on the original Star Wars and would later work on the movie Shazam. They also hired Pixel Magic, which worked on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 and 2. And lastly, they hired Rhythm and Hue, which would later work on Game of Thrones and 2019's Hellboy. Rhythm and Hue would create a new computer program for the dogfight tornado scene, as well as over 100 other visual effects shots. The first cut of X2 was rated R by the Motion Picture Associations of America. To make it fit the PG-13 rated they wanted, they had to cut out a few seconds of violent shots with Wolverine when Stryker's army storms the X-Mansion. X2 opened in North America on May 2nd of 2003 in 3,749 theaters, making $85,558,731. The film's total gross was $407,711,549, with North America earning it $214,949,694 and $192,761,855 worldwide. This was a huge financial success since it recouped its production budget by 3 times. At this time, X2 debuted simultaneously in 93 different countries, which made it the largest North America and international opening ever. This also made it the 6th highest grossing film of 2003. Some of the other films were Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl, The Matrix Reloaded, and at number 1, Finding Nemo. Not only did X2 make a lot of money, it also received positive reviews, with praise aimed at the acting, action, and story. The website Rotten Tomatoes reports that 86% of critics viewed the film favorable. This was based on 222 reviews with an average score of 7.5 out of 10. It even impressed Robert Ebert on how Singer was able to handle so many characters in one film, but felt the storyline didn't live up to its potential. He also wrote that the film's closure was perfect for a future installment. Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars. So X2 was doing far better than its predecessor in financial gain, critic scores, and went on to winning the Saturn Award for Best Science Fiction Film. Bryan Singer, Dan Harris, Michael Dougherty, and John Ottman would all receive nominations on their work of this film, as well as nominations for costume, makeup, visual effects, and DVD release. In total, they had 8 nominations. The Political Film Society also honored X2 in the categories of Human Rights and Peace, while the film was also nominated for the Hugo Award of Best Dramatic Presentation Longform. In May of 2007, Rotten Tomatoes listed X2 as the 5th greatest comic book film of all time. In 2019, X2 has dropped down a bit in this list to 32nd, but that is all because since its release, it's helped pave the way for comic book to film in the industry, and many movies have come out, but this movie is still claimed as a great comic book film. With X2 being a huge success, things were looking bright for the future of the franchise, but a sudden exit and a rush production would see the X-Men leave behind their former glory. Join me next time as we take a deeper dive into X-Men: The Last Stand.